All right, everybody, we're going to call this meeting to order.
Hooray.
Several of us have headaches today, so I'm not gonna use the mallet. It's 2:32 p.m. on this beautiful day, and 9th of June, 2016. Thank you for joining us. This is the Technical Advisory Committee meeting for AMATS. And first thing I'm going to do is roll call. Ms. Petco.
Deanne Petco, Deputy Director, Health and Human Services.
And you're here.
Oh.
That's okay. This is your girl.
My first time.
That's good. Now we all know who she is. I know. Ms. Cars here. Ms. Romeo's here. Ms. Witt here. Mr. Edmondson
Here.
Mr. Loves is not here. Mr. Leatherbeer.
Present.
Mr. Edwards.
Here.
Mr. Hanson.
Here.
And we do have quorum. Craig, have you made her public involvement announcement?
I will. I want to make sure for the record we show that Ms. Walsh and Mr. Hart are excused, not absent.
Great.
Let's see, it's been a while. We're at AMATS, right?
Yes.
This is an AMATS Technical Advisory Committee meeting, and all of our meetings are open to the public. The public is invited to comment. If we have a business item, we'll have a presentation by staff or a consultant. Then the committee will be given a chance to discuss the item, and then at that point, the public will be invited to comment.
Thank you. So first ahead of us is approval of the agenda. Move to approve.
So moved.
Seconded. Second. Okay. So moved by Ms. Carr, seconded by Mr. Edmondson. Are there any opposed to the approval? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. What was that?
Just here for.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
We can speak up. Next in front of us is the meeting minutes from the 14th of April, which is actually the last time we met, because we did not meet last month, so.
That's right.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's some edits we need to make to the minutes, and we just haven't done it yet. I just told Lori 2 seconds ago. So there are a few things that we need to correct in the minutes. Do you want me to call them out?
Is that minor?
They're minor.
Yes, we had a editorial just right now.
I can help with those. Do you want me to say what they were?
Sure.
Okay. On page 2 at the very bottom, last paragraph, there's a section that needs to be removed. It says such as school programs or design oversight. We need to remove that. And then on the next page, page 3, we need to add an and after the design and construction of the second sentence on page 3.
Where was that? Which paragraph?
That's the first paragraph on page 3, where it says design construction, just design and construction.
and construction. Got it.
Those are the only edits.
Okay. I asked for that because Ms. Witt moved, Mr. Edwards seconded. I want to make sure that they were okay with the edits. So read.
So do we need to amend our motion?
You just approve as amended.
That's correct.
Say it.
Just correct it.
To approve as amended.
Second.
Okay. All right. Are there any opposed to the motion? Hearing none. Those are approved with those edits. Thank you. All right. Next item ahead of us is our first action item, 5A, the Freight Advisory Committee Appointments Memo.
Sorry. In just one quick change here. Under background, it says members of this third sentence says members of this 10-member committee. It should be 11-member. It's an 11-member committee. Basically, we have the 2 new appointments and then reappointments. They slipped through the cracks, and we should have reappointed some of these folks a while ago, but they're there listed. The 2 new members, Katie Gage from the International Airport, and Dr. Darren Prokop, who is a replacement for Dr. Philip Price for the University of Alaska. You see the appointments listed below under new appointments, and then everyone is on the back page. I will just say that I was not involved in the creation of this memo because I've been out of town, but the expiration are all February 2019, and normally we rotate those. So my thought was, after discussing this with Aaron earlier, is that what we normally do is we break them down into 4 members, 3 members, and 3 members, and then we'd have someone's term expiring in 17, someone in 18, and someone in 19. Happy to roll the dice and do that with Aaron here in the next couple days, and then take it to the policy committee with those staggered terms, or we can bring it back to you after we do that if you want, just so you would see the staggering. You know, the first 4 could be 2017, the next 3 18, the next 3 19, or 2 sets of 4 and 1 set of 3. Sorry, that's math. That's not my thing. Your call on that. I'm happy to do that as a kind of an editorial thing, staggering the terms, and I can send it out to you so you can see it, or we can bring this up next month. I don't remember when. I don't think we probably have a next meeting scheduled, but I don't know when it is for the Freight Advisory Committee. But I just got back into town last night, so I didn't see it till this morning. So.
Questions or comments from the committee?
With the current breakout of who's there for their first term and their second term, in effect, we're already going to have a stagger by the time we come around for February of 2019. Some of them will be, if you will, eligible for their second term, and several of them will be terming out.
Yep.
So to a certain extent, we've already got a built-in stagger as presented. So I don't know that there's really a lot to be gained by taking it back, throwing the dice, and shortening up some of the terms for some of these folks that are otherwise perfectly willing to serve the full second term out. So I think we should just stick with the way it's presented.
That's easier.
Any other questions or comments? I kind of have the same thought, really looking at it.
And if I may, just for the policy committee, just as long as it's made very clear as to what this means.
Sure. I'll just use what Jim said in the minutes.
There you go. I mean, I get it.
Yeah, no, I get it too.
Basically, everybody who's on their second term, we're just gonna kick out. Oh,
They'll be termed out.
They'll be termed out. Yeah.
Craig, just on the table in the back, just on the bottom one for Dr. Ward, can you use the same font for first or second term? It just stands out like mine.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe his stands out.
Steve Rebecca would be very
Good eye.
proud of you.
Well, I'm good.
Ms.
I
Carson?
look up to him.
Are these 2 appointments here in the audience? Are either of them?
I don't have any idea.
Okay.
Or Katie Gage or Dr. Prokop in the audience? Nope.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, then this is the opportunity for public comment. Is there anybody here that would like to have a question or comment on this item 5A in front of us? Anybody at all? Seeing none, matter lies with the committee.
To approve with the edit changing from 10 to 11 on that first page for the edit. I like the font to be different, so.
A second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Carson. Any opposed to forwarding this to the policy committee for final approval? None, that is approved. Next, we have anything, oh, thunder.
Resolution there?
Sorry, thunderies are hard. All right, the next item ahead of us is Act 5B. It's a resolution regarding downtown traffic solutions.
Okay, so this came to us at the request of Assemblymember Flynn, who's on the policy committee, and asked us to take action on this. And then obviously eventually end up having the policy committee take action on it. It's related to all the kind of stuff that's happening in the downtown area, the Kinnicarm Crossing project, the Seward Highway to Glen Highway connection, the Gamble Street 4-lane to 3-lane idea, just all sorts of things that are happening down in that area. And this resolution itself is asking that the policy committee direct DOT and PF and municipal staff to restart the planning for the Seward Highway to Glen Highway connection with consideration given to a with and a without a Kinnicarm Crossing option. I think if my understanding is correct, what Mr. Flynn is asking us to do is to, I don't know that it actually, it does talk that staff is directed to conduct an initial conceptual planning exercise. My understanding is that he's looking to have some money put aside out of the AMATS allocation to do some sort of planning effort to look at this sort of thing. But it also might be that he's just looking to ask us, policy committee, to direct DOT and the MOA to restart the highway to highway, Seward Highway to Glen Highway connection project. I think there's a lot of stuff that's going on in here, and some things in here that need to be tweaked a bit. My thought was it might be a good thing to have a work session on so that we can, I don't know, wordsmith is the right idea, but fix some of the things, some of the stuff related to contracting at DOT is a little bit off, so we need to tweak that a little bit. But my suggestion would be a work session. We could do that relatively quickly and get this back on the agendas in the next month for approval. But that's kind of my thoughts on this. Again, this is coming from Assemblymember Flynn, who's one of the policy committee members.
Questions? Comments?
I would reiterate Craig's comment to the effect that there are a number of whereases in this memo as currently presented that are in dire need of editing and correction. And I would suspect that a work session would be a better place for that than sitting here right now.
So since this is a business item ahead of us, if our recommendation is to do a work session, will we have to make a motion to have a work session?
Well, we don't usually make motions for work sessions. I think, Lori, correct me, but we would have to table this.
You would table it, but you
So-
would need a motion to table it.
Motion to
Okay,
table
we need a
it,
motion
and
to
then
table
you would
it.
just direct staff to,
Got it.
or
Okay.
organize, schedule a work session, etc.
All right. Don't make a motion yet, as we still have to open public comment, but I just was making a clarification. Yeah.
If I may, there's, one of the statements, as Mr. Emerson was mentioning, is that in the whereas is it's problematic, is that it implies here that there is an existing contract and funding that could be that is available for this, and that there is no funding for this. It would have to be programmed either through AMATS in its TIP or through the state, through the STIP. And that conversation has not occurred, and so I think it's a little misleading, and perhaps there's some misinformation there. But I would support tabling this and having those conversations about how this would be funded and how it would be contracted.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? No? And at this time, it's open for public comment. If there's anybody that would like to comment on this resolution regarding downtown traffic solutions, remember, you have to state your name for the record.
Downtown? Did you say downtown?
Yes, for the downtown traffic
Yes.
solutions
I would
memo.
like to.
Yes, please state your name for the record and spell it if it's confusing, please.
My name is Sheila Suffolk. Let me put my other glasses on. I just got done finding the house. I actually sat on AMATS quite a while ago, and I was here when we made the decision to allow the traffic to come down C, A, and C, and through downtown. The original long-range transportation plan had it going around the downtown area, and it was done because the bridge couldn't really afford to build the infrastructure associated with it. And it was done as a temporary act on the assumption that that money would become available and the traffic would eventually be connected into the Ingrid Gamble, and it was a very elaborate plan. The reality is that the bridge is a long ways off, and pretty questionable, I think, now in terms of whether it's going to be constructed or not. I happen, over the years, to have moved to actually 12th and C, so I live right next to A Street, and people are going down A Street at about 55 miles an hour. At 12th and C, there are 2 schools. It's the only cross area between 15th and 12th because there's that big area fenced off. I see children in the summertime crossing that, and I see trucks hitting there. There's a hill that goes down that road. It's just a matter of time. And we've already had a pedestrian be killed in downtown by a semi, I don't know, it was a while back. So it's just a matter of time that we're going to see more deaths. There's all from A and C, from 3rd Avenue, all the way through Midtown, has constant public access along the sidewalks. And the traffic is not policed. And it's currently, 45 miles an hour. It should at most be 25 miles an hour. And what I would strongly recommend is in the new long-range transportation plan that you actually renege on the agreement to have A and C be the primary truck corridors, because they just roar down them, and also we have to replace those roads constantly. If you go down it right now, it isn't everyday traffic that's wrecking those roads, it's the trucks from the port. They come through at 3 a.m., they rattle through, there's residential development all along there. So I would strongly recommend that the new plan move those trucks back to the Ingrid Gamble, and I think there's people who can talk about Ingrid Gamble, and that community has really worked for strategies to make them move through their community in a way that won't be so disruptive and so dangerous. So I think you have a lot of opportunity lying ahead of you. The decision to allow those trucks on A and C was a temporary decision, and I'm hoping that you'll reverse it.
Thank you. And you said your name, you're Sheila Selkirk.
Sheila Selkirk.
How do you spell your last name?
Selkregg.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I have a process question. If I testify, if it's tabled and comes back, will I have an opportunity to testify later if I wait?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Hi, my name is Gary Katsian with Kittleson and Associates. Just following on what Ms. Selkirk added on, this morning it was distributed from the municipality of Anchorage's Community Development Department, the findings from the Smart Growth America conference that was held about downtown, and one of the action items in that was talking about a very similar type of process to make sure that the region relooks at how truck traffic and other traffic comes through the downtown area. So it's part of this document that the MOA just distributed this morning. So just wanted to make sure that was included in the discussion.
Thank you, Gary. Is there anybody else? Hearing and seeing none, the matter lies with the committee.
Based on the recommendation of staff, I would recommend that I move that it be tabled and that there be a work session, and that the opportunities for funding be explored by AMATS staff to the city and state.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Witt, seconded by Mr. Edmondson. Are there any opposed to the motion? Hearing none, this item will be tabled and we will schedule a work session, please. All right.
out, chipper and awake. So let's go ahead and do second quarter obligation report for AMATS. Just a heads up, we are required to be plus or minus 10%. If you look on the very last page, we're at 6.35%. Hooray! Oh, come on.
Join me.
Hooray! Thank you. It makes me feel like I'm doing something worthwhile. I appreciate it. Okay, so first we have O'Malley Road reconstruction. You'll notice that on column D, the amount has actually been increased a little. That's the current engineer's estimate for FY16. So we're not actually doing anything with it because we're giving a little more time to see if that goes up or down. But it's just a heads up. Next one is Abbott Road rehab. An additional $891,000 was obligated for right-of-way to keep that project moving forward for phase 2. Any questions there? Next, Spenard Road rehab, Hillcrest to Benson. We had $1.4 million programmed into the TIP for it, but with the bond that was passed in 2016, we're not anticipating having that funding obligated this year. So we're going to look at options on what to use that money for, and I'll kind of explain that in a minute. The next one is C Street Ocean Dock Road Access Ramp Reconnaissance Study. Well, we have the Minnesota Drive Mobility Study. Everyone knows that's going forward. The C Street Ocean Dock Road Reconnaissance Study is moving forward. I'm not sure, Jim, if we're at a point yet where we can talk about where it's at.
We're in the process of soliciting for a consultant.
Thank you. So now we go down to the next portion. It's the previously programmed roadway projects, utilizing 16 funding. So you have a couple of things here. The red are de-obligations, so that's money that's been previously obligated, that's de-obbing, so it opens it up for additional use. But we have two major construction overruns. We have Dowling Road West Phase 2 and Eagle River Road Rehab 5.3 to 12.6. About $4 million total for those two. At this point, we have $2.4 million, a little over actually. Sorry, adding up all the 100,000s on the next page. We only need about $1.2 million if we can't find additional de-ops for this year of the AMATS allocation to cover that. So we're waiting to see what happens. Next quarter report, we'll see if we get any additional de-ops and then kind of move forward from there. We'll keep you updated as that goes on. And that kind of is where the Spenard corridor, the Spenard Road Rehab 1.4 million ties in. With not needing to obligate that funding, we have some additional money there to help cover any construction overruns if needed. Any questions on the roadway? Perfect. So we will move to the non-motorized. We are charging ahead with the non-motorized bike, ped, and trails plan. We do have an item on here I wanted to bring up really quick. It is the implement bike plan multi-use path on Benson between Lois Drive and Minnesota Boulevard. So this one was added in for about $200,000 for design in 16. The issue is there's already a pathway on both sides of that section of Benson. So that's some additional money that will be freed up since we're not going to be constructing a third pathway in there, to my knowledge. And we're kind of getting options on what to do there, but our first one is actually pulling something out of the Benson Northern Lights pedestrian safety study and see if there's anything we can do with that in a relatively cheap amount of money. So I'll keep you updated as we move forward on that and see what happens. But we really want to keep that $200,000 within the non-motorized table. So we're working our butts off to get that done. We don't have any de-obs or any construction overruns for non-motorized. And then the CMAQ table, everything's going forward, just peachy keen on that. There's only one thing, the multimodal trip planner and smartphone application, and Jamie, please let me know if I'm saying this wrong. The $70,000 we have programmed in the TIP is not actually needed for 16.
Right.
It'll be needed in 17 instead. So we have another 70,000 kind of freed up for that. So we'll kind of keep our eye on what to do with that as well. And then we had just one de-ob for the travel options program, and that's it. Any questions or comments?
Minor comment.
Yes.
For the O'Malley Road reconstruction and remarks, engineers spelled correctly.
Thank you very much. I'm a planner, what can I say?
English spelled correctly.
Yeah.
I'll let you write it 20 times on the whiteboard later.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments?
Actually, I would like to just point out that the current year program, as we're working quarter to quarter, basically the source of funding for any construction overruns from prior year projects. And that's what we're seeing here. And because of, typically we don't have to draw on a current year program from prior year obligated projects, because we typically are able to close projects and free up additional federal money that has to come back into the program and be re-obligated that year. What has happened with our, we're having a difficult time closing projects right now because of adjustments that are underway with our new accounting system statewide. And so this is something that it will be monitoring closely because it has a pretty big effect on all of our projects statewide. And so, and it's good, like Aaron pointed out, that we've had 2 de-obligations to cover about half of what we need for some of the projects that have that need to be covered. And the other good news too is that we are seeing very competitive bids coming in on the project statewide. So, Mr. Anson?
And I just want to throw it out on Spinard Road, Hillcrest, it is fully funded with bonds, and we are going to construction in 2017.
Sweet.
I forgot to state my name. I'm Aaron Yeoman. I'm the AMATS Transportation Planner for DOT and PF. And I can help you spell it if you need.
Just don't have to spell it.
Any other questions or comments to the committee? Any questions or comments from the public at this time?
Yes, Mark Butler, Spinard area activist. The $200,000 that you mentioned, that's not necessary because of the 2 parallel paths on Benson. Are those current paths up to current standards, or are they insufficient? Because most of us who live and bike in that area find that those much older paths are not nearly the path that would be constructed by DOT or
Municipality.
municipality area.
Are you talking their
Yeah.
actual design standards or ADA compliance standards?
All the above.
I actually am not sure.
Okay, because I would hope that before you guys say, okay, we agree to move that money, that that they are investigated and someone says, yes, they are sufficient, because this was programmed here previously for this purpose.
Yeah, and it just.
Technically, it was programmed to construct a new pathway, not to rehabilitate existing pathways in that area. So if we were to rehabilitate the existing pathways, we would have to do something major
We
amendment
just
to the
amend the
tip.
language of the tip to change.
It sounds like a language change. Sounds easy to do.
Well, either way, there's going to be a language change because if it's not used on this segment and we use it somewhere else, there's going to be a modification. So, and the intent was to use the money in that area. If it's not specifically that segment, we're looking at the adjacent segment. Sorry, I'm being attacked by I keep breathing him up my nose. But the intent would be to look at, and I agree with you, it'd be nice to verify that the widths and grades and everything are compliant. So,
Condition.
what?
In the condition.
In the condition, yes.
Drive past there.
Yep.
Thank you.
5, 6 times, okay.
Yep. Thank you, Mark. Is there anybody else with any questions or comments? Ms. Brooks?
Ann Brooks, I would just follow on this conversation about the pathways. I think that going to that Northern Lights Benson pedestrian study, we did identify the condition of those trails adjacent to the road between Minnesota and Arctic Boulevard. And there's some sinkholes. I mean, there are some definite needs there to improve those pathways. So that's where the money shifts.
That's where we were looking, and to be honest, where we've been discussing. But the question is because Lois is to the west of Minnesota, that's the east, but looking in that area and seeing where the money can be best used. Yeah. All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you, Aaron. The next item before us is item 6B. It's an update on the Spinard corridor plan.
It's really a presentation, actually.
Okay, is it?
It was an update, now it's a presentation.
Okay.
Been around.
Alrighty. Yeah, I think so. Are there multiple presentations?
Yes.
Okay, and from this point on, are they presentations? Okay. I'm just wondering what I'm going to bring with me, so I will bring it all. Go to slideshow. You're gonna, I don't have Totally threw me for a loop with your presentation. There you go.
All right, so, I'm just gonna sit. Who am I? I'm just gonna sit, if that's all right, so I can forward the slides here from the computer. But my name is Joni Wilm, and I am an AMATS transportation planner, and I'm also the bike and ped coordinator for AMATS, and I'm also one of the lead project managers for the Spinard Corridor Plan. The other project manager is Steve Tobish with long range planning, but he had another meeting today, so he couldn't be here. But this is just a short and sweet presentation. It's really just an informational presentation to give you an update to where we're at on the project. So here's just some photos from the corridor. So we have begun the project a few weeks ago. We had our kickoff meetings. So again, that's me. We're the project managers. Steve Tobish, the senior planner from long range planning with the municipality, and myself. And just to give you a little bit of background, the project is funded through TIP money. We put in a nomination form for it to become funded by the TIP last go around, and it got awarded. So we were able to start the project this spring. So that's exciting. Couple things about the project. It's going to be Anchorage's first transit-oriented development project that we've seen. And so the point of the transit-oriented development is sort of to combine the land use planning aspects and the transportation planning aspects into one plan that can sort of take a comprehensive look at this corridor and do the best job of creating a livable community. And they've used this planning technique in a lot of other cities around the country to great success, and it's a very good tool. We're excited to get transit on board and incorporate, and we have DOT also on our advisory committee, and we'll be working closely with DOT throughout the planning process to make sure that we're all on board as well as engaging the community. So like I said, a mix of transportation land use planning. We're going to be looking at improving the networks for not only bike, ped, and transit users, but also vehicle drivers. And then we're also going to be looking heavily at redevelopment opportunities in the corridor. And as you know, there's a lot of underserved land there. There's a lot of parking. There's a lot of vacant or underutilized parcels that we hope to help redevelop into something that builds a community. So our planning team, we're really proud of our planning team. We have a great consultant from Boulder, Winter & Company. They specialize in transportation-oriented development, transit-oriented development. They also specialize in urban design and historic preservation. They were the lead consultant on the Government Hill Neighborhood Plan as well. And they're really great. We also have a lot of sub-consultants. All the folks in blue there are all local, so we really wanted to emphasize local on this project and get local experts in there. And I think almost everyone on the sub-consultants, except for urban advisors, has worked in the corridor. Solstice is located in the corridor, as is CRW, and so we are super excited. Alta and Planning and Design, they're bike and ped experts, and they have worked on the Bicycle Boulevard on 27th Avenue that you guys have heard about. So they're familiar with the corridor as well. We are sort of in the beginning stages. We had a kickoff meeting a few weeks ago, as I mentioned. What we're doing right now is we're coming together to create some of these existing conditions maps. So these are just some examples of the maps that we're creating. That these will go into an existing conditions report and just lay out what the situation is in the corridor. Now we'll have this to give out prior to our first public workshop. The first public workshop is going to take place last week in July. And we'll be sending out notifications to everyone to come participate in that. We started a Facebook and website already, and we're having really great feedback. I think we've represent half-mile diameter. So for those of you familiar with smart growth and livability, they sort of gauge the amount of distance that people are willing to walk as a quarter of a mile. I think it's extended to half mile now, but for a long time it's been a quarter of a mile. So we're trying to focus on those areas that are close to the corridor that we can look at redeveloping to create this network that supports transit, bike and ped, and car facilities. Anything I didn't mention on there? We'll also be including some Main Street conceptual designs in the final planning document, as well as incorporating a complete street design elements. And so that's just sort of a brief fast overview. The planning schedule is, so we began this spring. We have 2 public involvement workshops. We are going to be putting out a community survey in at least, probably a couple weeks here. We'll have an open house. Like I mentioned, our website, Facebook, and Instagram are already up. And the website, we don't have internet here. I'm just going to go to it, but if you go to the website, I've got the link on the next page. It's great. It's really, we've been getting a lot of positive feedback on the website so far, so it has a lot of good information. We'll come out with a public review draft, which we will bring forward to this committee and to the policy committee, to the assembly and the planning and zoning commission. So we'll make the full gamut of review from all the committees, and then we hope to get an adoption next spring sometime. So we are ambitious. And then here are the links to the website, Facebook, and Instagram. And yep, right now, but we will. Does anyone have any questions? I just want to make it brief, and it's a sunny day outside, so anybody have any questions? No?
I just have a comment, and that's it. I'm not opposed to any of this, but one of the main things when you start building these things, designing and building these things, and this was created 50, 60 years ago, is lack of right of way. Okay, like Spinard Road, it's 60 foot wide. Some of the buildings are right up against the back of sidewalk, or very close to it. So if you think about expanding the footprint of the road to incorporate a lot of things, sometimes, you know, a foot or so sometimes isn't bad, but other times you're buying whole buildings and relocating businesses and doing a lot of stuff like that. So that should be at least noted in there that, you know, we have limited right of way, and it may have impact on some businesses.
Right, and Jerry, I'm glad you brought that point up. I mean, I think that's a really good thing to remember. I'm just going to go back to our consultants page here. We'll be hopefully working closely with EM&E as we develop the plan. We'll be working with these engineering groups who already are very familiar with the corridor. So, and our consultants have experience working within the limitations of other corridors. So, and I think our aim is, again, it's a planning document. We're not out to come out with a new road design. We did comment on the road design. We did submit. That was our first deliverables. Just have our professional consultants submit some comments on the road design, which we did. And then, but we're not planning to come out with a new road design. It's again a planning document. I think part of it will be to make some recommendations about a future road planning design. But I think I'm confident that these consultants have experience making do with existing conditions.
It's just something that has to be considered when we come into this.
Right. So it's a good point. Managing expectations, right?
And along those same lines, Jody, with the land use folks being, the long-range planning folks being involved in it, is the intent also to have kind of like a blueprint, if you will, for areas as there is redevelopment. I mean, acreage is aging now to the point where we are seeing some areas being redeveloped or buildings, being taken down and replaced. So is it intended to kind of guide those, to change the, possibly modify the zoning to encourage mixed use or high density residential, that kind of thing?
Well, we will be working within the confines of the updated land use plan map that long range planning is getting
Okay.
through right now. If there are some other zoning change recommendations, that would come later as like an overlay district. But I think the idea is to try and, you know, densify the corridor somewhat, but it's not, we're not Portland, we're not Seattle. It's not trying to do it to the degree where it would be unrecognizable. We're trying to maintain the character of the corridor as much as we can, while allowing for some densification and just a better quality of development that's currently going on. So, does that answer the question?
Jennifer, just to help partially speak for Hal Hart, who's not in the room, I know that when they were doing the update, when they're looking at the land use plan map, Spinard is one of the corridors of which they're looking at kind of making those changes. There were a couple different kind of city center areas of which the focus is of that land use plan map of making, and it's definitely working in tandem with the idea of what the intent of this project is as well, of making sure that those land uses are supportive of and work well with the transit-oriented development, I mean, hand in hand. So they're kind of two different projects, but I know that they are keeping very close order on it, so.
Members of the public?
Please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mark Butler, I'm one of the founders, along with John Weddleton of our Chamber of Commerce. We have 150 business people, many of whom have owned or operate businesses directly on that. We were not noticed about the first meeting or anything that's happened. Are those meetings public?
Yeah, the first initial, the team came up once and just did just a kickoff meeting just for internal
Okay.
MOA and
It was
project
an
management
agency
stuff.
scoping meeting is what
Okay,
it
so
was.
there are no
Yeah.
public members there?
There weren't any public members.
I'm asking, okay.
Yeah, there weren't. But for this next round of public events, we're gonna have that last week in July. We will be sending out mailers. We'll be posting on Facebook. We'll be posting on the AMATS page. We'll
And
be
you
getting
can
the word
notify the
out.
3 community councils plus in the area, plus the
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce that represents 150 businesses.
Yep, absolutely. And Pete and I came to the last community council meeting last week on Wednesday.
Which community council?
The Spinard Community
Okay.
Council meeting.
There's 3 on Spinard right now.
Okay, we were at the one at the rec center.
That's Spinard.
Okay, so we were there last week and we will probably make an announcement on the SEC website, mailing list as well. So we are, we will really try hard to get the word out.
Okay, and you have public members on your committee?
We have an advisory committee, we have an advisory committee, and I think we have 12 members on there. We got 2 of them in the room here. Brian Hill is on it. Over there, Aaron is on it. Bart Rudolph here with Transit is on it.
And public members? So
I think
could that list be available? I noticed that
Brian
looking
is-
at the website, it's not available. I don't see it on the website or the Facebook page.
Okay, we can post it on the website, the advisory council members.
I would hope you'd be able to. And then a couple existing conditions that are follow up Mr. Hansen's. The one thing when I was on the Mark Butler, Spinard area, the Midtown plan, which got going, happened, and then didn't finish. Our consultants, the plans consultants from out of state said, wow, you have mega long blocks. That was their comment. The most distinguishing thing. It's super long blocks that then create great trauma at intersections. The most obvious one, of course, is the Beartooth intersection at 27th and Spinard, because there's no cross street between Minnesota and there. And so, as Ann has pointed out strongly for many years, there needs to be some cross streets in there. So to me, hopefully, this organization, this plan will address that issue and how potentially to make that change. The second issue is what?
Just one, part of the Spinard Road project is to realign 27th.
Oh, we're fully aware of that, yes. We're talking about the crossroads between major streets So if this traffic cannot dissipate easily, like at Beartooth when the movies are coming in and going out the crowds, then it stresses the large intersections, right? You understand that concept? And so both in Midtown and Spenard, we have that existing condition. And even if we have a wonderful corridor and we still have that crisis at each intersection, it may not help it very much to put a lot of money into concrete and asphalt if we got that same problem continuing. The other one, is what Mr. Hanson mentioned, that we have limited right-of-way. For the length of Spenard Road, there is different widths. In the area you guys are building this year and next year, thank you, it is 60 feet. We understand that fully. However, from a planning sense, members of the community, the business community, I think would be just about unanimous in saying that that's good in some ways because it's not like Midtown acres and acres of parking with a big box store in the back, but rather the businesses are up close to the street. And many communities in America are specifically trying to redo that to get to that location. And we have that, even though it's a hassle right now because the streets are so horrible and the pedestrian facilities and lack of bike facilities. That could be an advantage to this area as Alaska's and Anchorage's premier shopping district. And so hopefully that will complement that with trying to figure out how to put it in different. And my understanding is the middle block between 30th and Minnesota has a slightly larger right of way than the northern one where you're doing right now. So even a few feet here and there would help.
So in answer to the first part of your question there, the consultants that we have on the team did submit comments, as I mentioned, to the road design folks, and I think they addressed some the crossing issue that you were mentioning, so in their comments.
No. I'm sorry, I don't believe so. And Ann is agreeing with me. We're not talking about 27th intersection.
No,
we
they're
understand
talking
that.
about the big blocks. When you're talking, like our arterial spacing is 1 mile spacing and there's no blocks in between. So you have Minnesota, you have Spenard, and there's no opportunity to go back and forth.
For traffic movement between the two.
Yes, we don't have a complete grid. And there's missing portions and it pushes pedestrians long distances to cross. That's why you have mid-block crossing problems that came up in the Northern Lights Benson pedestrian safety study. That's what he's talking about. I got exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, sorry.
I got it, yeah, those things, yeah, Midtown,
yeah.
yeah.
So the different concept there. So yes, we understand, we appreciate any comments that they can have on this year's project that we're going to have completed by September 30th of 2017. Right?
Gonna do our damn.
Something like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the Spenard Road corridor plan? Thank you, Joni.
All right, thank you.
All right, next item is the presentation on the Anchorage Safe Routes to School plan. And I'm guessing it's right here. Yep.
Yeah, Lori was sorry she couldn't be here. We all should be celebrating. She's graduating her son from college. It's something all parents strive for. So Lori's wishes she could be here. So I'm here. My name is Ann Brooks. I'm with Brooks and Associates, and I'm here to talk about an Anchorage Safe Routes to Schools plan that Lori Skanke and I have been working on. Just real quick introduction about safe routes to schools. The main thrust of Safe Routes to Schools is to increase the number of kids walking and biking to school. And the program itself empowers communities to look at their infrastructure, look at their facilities, and find ways to make it safer and encourage people to make it part of their routine activity. And it emphasizes the 5 E's. Some people add other E's to that, but education, encouragement, engineering, which we do through infrastructure changes, enforcement, evaluation. And so just to go back kind of to our timeline, I think it was April of 2012, Lori and I attended the National Train the Trainers course on Safe Routes to Schools. So we're both have credentials to teach the Safe Routes to Schools course and work through these programs. We came back from the training excited. We wrote a grant to Alaska Safe Routes to Schools and obtained $50,000 to begin a planning process for Anchorage on Safe Routes to Schools. We teamed with HDL Engineering Consultants and Sustainable Design Group. They're landscape architects out of Palmer, and they've done Safe Routes to Schools work for Massey Borough and the city of Palmer. Our approach to it, when we had first discussed it, I have an engineering background. I wanted to see if we could start from a more technical background. Let's look at the bike ped crash data around the city to see if the data led us to a particular subset of schools to begin the planning and determine what's going on. And so we prepared that. We did some mapping work. HDL did that work. We prepared a GIS-based mapping tool that looked at where are our current sidewalks, where are planned sidewalks. So we overlaid in the GIS the bike plan, the pedestrian plan, the crash data, the current school boundaries, the safe walking routes. We also looked at school. We talked to the Anchorage School District, and almost from the beginning of the project, we've seen declines in budgets across the board. So we also looked at things like, are there schools that have pockets where students are being bused from, that if we made a trail connection or a sidewalk connection, those kids, we would no longer have to pay for busing. Those kids could safely walk to school. So those are some of the things that we did, sort of in pre-planning. And then we met with, we sent notices out to schools. We took all the elementary schools in Anchorage. We had an initial list of about 12 that were identified with the data, and then in our conversations with the district. And we sent out and asked them if they wanted to participate, because one of the key things with the process is you want the school community involved in the discussion, because a lot of the education encouragement starts at home, starts with the school community, so we wanted them involved. We met with the principals, we set up site audits, and we conducted the site audits and the visits in the mornings and afternoons of particular school days, and then we're in the process. That's where we are right now. We've drafted our plan. We're circling back to work with the Anchorage School District to make sure that they're happy with the plan, that we can collectively come up with some prioritized improvements. We hope to have a district-wide training. Typically, you would work with one school. You would do the training in conjunction with the site audits, and then sit down as a school community around one school and develop a plan. We were trying to figure out how to maximize the money, so we thought we'd do our site audits and then do the planning as a whole exercise with all those school communities. And so that's still out there that needs to be done before we finalize the plan. The schools we selected were, as I mentioned before, are they predominantly walking schools? Could some infrastructure replace a bus? Was the school interested in participating? We narrowed it down to those 5 schools that are listed: Wonder Park, Ptarmigan, Russian Jack, Sand Lake, and Chinook. Interestingly, 4 out of those 5 schools are Title I schools, so they have low-income students. And it was an absolute eye-opener to see what kind of diversity we have in Anchorage. We read about it, but to see it and understand that there are schools that are, have a significant number of their population that are to learning English, and parents are learning English. So it put a little twist in it. But this is an example of a map. I wanted to show this because I think it's a good resource for all of us. So this would be Ptarmigan Elementary. The red or the orange is the school boundary, attendance boundary. The dashed white line is a safe walking boundary. So up on the left-hand corner, you can see this pocket. It's a mobile home park. Students from that area are bused to the school because there's no way to get from there to the school on a planned route. So that's just an example. The green and pink dots you see around are the intersections or locations of pedestrian and bicycle crashes from the traffic data. And the thin blue lines are where we have existing sidewalks. So it just provided a lot of information when we sit down and work with the communities, then we can brainstorm solutions to some of that work.
So, and was, within the boundaries there, the white boundaries, is there busing within that area?
No.
So that is the walking area, and anything that's not in it is bus, okay?
Right, and I think one of the things that we learned, I'll go ahead and move on to the observations, and I'll, what we found, and maybe I might have edited out because this list was getting really long, so I'm going to go through these and I'll come back to what you were pointing, one of the things that we observed throughout. We saw at almost all the schools in the neighborhood see increased traffic before and after school. Sand Lake was really amazing on talking to the parents, and the parents were reversing the direction or changing the direction of flow on one of the streets, the little informal signs, so that the traffic would flow and the kids could get out of the car on the right side of the street to go to the little pathway to the school. Other places, there were, cars coming into little side streets where it was a short distance for the kids to walk. There's still a tremendous amount of automobile drop-off and pickup at all the schools. Maintenance issues, there's crosswalks and pedestrian markings that are fading. There's a lot of places where, we almost need a citywide program to just go clear the shrubs that have grown over the sidewalk to make for some clear sight distance and clean them up. And especially some of the trails connecting to the schools. They're kind of they just don't hit the radar screen, I guess. We found in talking to parents and in the surveys that we had returned that certainly we would all expect the darkness and the weather to influence things. And I think we've all noticed with an increase in pedestrian fatalities around the state, as we have no snow, that helps brighten things and add contrast to the dark clothing that people wear. That is a concern at dark. Jennifer, your question about people coming to the school from other places. A lot of our schools have magnet programs or special programs. Russian Jack Elementary houses the state school for the blind. There's a program at Wonder Park that deals with severely handicapped children. So there are buses coming to the schools. They're not entirely walking schools, but they mostly accommodate other programs. The other thing that we may not know that we learned through the process is there's a CIT program, Children in Transition program, that deals with children whose families are homeless. And one of the ways to ensure those children's success is to keep them in their home school and surroundings. When I saw taxi cabs arriving, I would go, and why are these cabs here? And often those children get a ride to school in a cab to keep them in their home school to help them be successful students. A couple of things that we're, we hate to see seatbelt use. It wasn't universal for parents or children. I don't know how many schools, probably every single one we did a survey, there was a parent picking up their kid, driving through the parking lot on a cell phone. So distracted where all this stuff is going on. In talking to the principals and school staff, probably the biggest challenge of all is the parents. And I think we've all been there, dropping up a kid, picking up a kid, you're just not paying attention to a lot of things, and you want to drop your kid off right here, not over here. I was amazed at how many parents would actually drop their kid off and then slowly go around so they could physically see them enter the front door of the school. So very, very interesting. There's a lot of staff time that manages traffic at all our schools. Just a couple of quick slides to show you. Sand Lake Elementary School, this is exiting into the program. There's this tiny little girl on a bike following her brothers. Really steep little trail comes down, dumps right out on the municipal street, or the neighborhood street, and people are parked all along it for pickup. And there was for example, no parking sign at the end of that trail. It just left a gap for those kids to put down. On the other side, we saw a lot of this in the evening, trails blocked, people queuing up to pick up the kids. Ptarmigan Elementary, there's a real need for something to get those kids to the street on that side of the exit from the school. And then there were places where, you know, at Ptarmigan, we just did Edward Street. Edward Street's beautiful. We put in typical Collector Street cross-section with on all the ADA improvements at all the ramps. But then you go on to school, and here, this sidewalk's right in front of the building. There's nothing, there's no ADA. And some of it's the age of the facility, but then some of it is where's the, you know, where's your money put, where's the emphasis. Brush and Jack, the teacher, the signage that's out in front of the school, the teacher in the vest. We saw that in a lot of schools. There's a lot of staff time that goes into managing traffic at the schools. There's a crossing guard. The lower right is 20th Avenue and McGraw Street, where the crossing guard, one of the crossing guards at the school had actually been there almost 12 years, and she was going, "Bye, Joe. See you later, Sally." She knew everybody coming in and out of the school. You know, she'd gotten a lot. Wonder Park. We did 2 site visits there. The first site visit, we found out that the district had redesigned their pickup and drop-off area. So this was a picture on the lower left from the first site visit, and you have these, you know, parents just pulling up to the curb, and they're sort of queuing, you know, squaring off. It's like, can't we all like park? You're going the same direction, so there's some certainty with what you're going to see. And then the graph on the lower right is Wonder Park returned all our surveys. They're a National Safe Routes to School survey, one that went for the students. They kind of did a 2-day observation in the classroom. They asked the kids who walked to school, and they did a tally. So the graph on the right shows, you know, how people got to school. So there's a fair amount of carpooling, but an awful lot of family vehicles, and then buses, and, you know, and walking. Still nice to see walking was the number 2 choice. Chinook Elementary School, this is an example of another crossing guard on 88th on the lower right. And then on the lower left, here's combining fading pavement markings for the pedestrian crossing with a lot of vegetation that obstructs sight lines for anyone using the path or adults observing students. Some of our area-wide recommendations this is just a brief list, but everybody said we need to get more information out, and we need to get information out in the languages that are spoken. We need to find ways to do that. We talked about, you know, trying to do some work with the schools at the high school level and see if we can have them design PSAs related to safety. Try to think of low-cost, easy things to do. The district had a hazardous routes committee, and I'm not quite sure when that committee sort of lapsed, but they used to handle, you know, issues surrounding safety of students getting to school, busing issues. What we talked about doing and what we're recommending is sort of create a safe routes diagnostic team. We found out principals spend a lot of time dealing with parents, and it often interfered with their relationship with the student and the education part of it, to have to handle the traffic part of it in a conversation. So the idea would be to see if we could reconvene the committee and have, you know, talk about ways to help have that committee help individual schools when they have a problem, but do it with, you know, more than just the one safety guy in the district. You know, maybe get some help from other areas too. Safety stings, just to go out and make people aware of what their behavior is doing. Maintenance, we talked about ADA compliance, upgrade sidewalks. And then right now, the Alaska Injury Prevention Center and folks at the Department of Health and Human Services have done training to do a walking school bus, which is another tool that can be used for safe routes to schools. And you know, one of our recommendations was figure out how we can work with NGOs and nonprofits to help with with outreach for kids and develop safer routes. We have also identified schools site specific to those 5 schools recommendations, but I wanted to keep today brief. We recommend we conduct a Safe Routes to Schools survey at all the schools, as we do public service announcements, more education, how's behavior changing. And that way, it's kind of like our Bike to Work Day counts. You would have a snapshot annually that could help direct funds to things. Strengthen partnerships with lots of folks. There's a tremendous number of businesses around the community that are school business partners. And maybe there's a piece of their contribution, time or money, that could be set aside to help the district and the city pay for some of the education programs. Our next step, we're actively right now working with the Anchorage School District to incorporate their comments. As you would expect, we need to be very careful with our language when we produce these reports. And so we're working on some of that so that we do a good job of that. We will finalize a draft document, we hope in the fall, to complete the Safe Routes to Schools training with the selected schools. And our idea was to have it as broad as we wanted to make it. Finalize the documents, prioritize the recommendations, and seek funding. I put transportation alternatives in here. I think there are other sources of funding as well. That was quick and dirty, but Lori and I are welcome to answer any questions you have, and quick presentation. Any questions?
I think I have more of a common sense question. As I'm working on Bright Amigos and the school pool function of that, I'm excited to see what you guys have come up with the numbers for congestion and how can we address those family-related vehicles through the carpooling and the school pooling and having that be an option. Sure, you're going into your training.
It would be great. I mean, a lot of things happened since we started this project. The city's website is now language compliant, and you can so that should be a huge help to the district. And the other thing is, I know with Vision Zero, there's some Safe Routes to Schools funding in that, so we're just beginning to do some coordination and try to understand what was envisioned in that grant request for that money.
Thank you. Thank you, Ann. All right. Next item is 6D, presentation on Minnesota Dry Study.
Hello, my name is Edith McKee. I'm with the Department of Transportation, and I'm the project manager for the Minnesota Drive Study Westchester Lagoon to Seward Highway Reconnaissance Study. And Louis with Kinney Engineering is the project manager of the consulting firm that was awarded the contract, and she's going to do the presentation today.
Okay, so I've presented this already kind of at the beginning of this project last summer in July to this community. Basically, the purpose of this project is to kind of look over the whole corridor and look at safety and operational concerns, kind of figure out what they are, and come up with a broad list of possible alternatives. And then we looked a little more closely at some of those alternatives and kind of not really at recommendations, but DOT's been able to look at that and come up with some plans for how to move forward with some of these projects. So here's we started off in June of last year. We met with the your committee and the policy committee in July. We by September we had a website with an interactive map up for public comment. We went through this second stage of the study, looking more closely at some of the alternatives. Kind of the end of the year, we had an open house in January where we presented those concepts to the public, and we were also at the transportation fair in February, and then right now we're in the last cleaning up the language and getting the report ready for final. So that's where we're at. So we had 287 public comments. Most, the highest number of them came in through our interactive map on the website. Also, the open house generated lots of comments. On the right is an example of one of the project boards that was at the open house, and people could come in and just kind of write a comment and stick it in on a sticky on the board, and that really generated a lot of discussion, and we had people sitting around the boards and talking to each other. There was a lot of discussion at the open house. Also email and phone and Facebook and at the transportation fair, so quite a bit of team. So this is it's kind of a long corridor, so this is by location in the corridor, what we got public comments on. By far the highest was Northern Lights Benson Boulevard couplet. Also Spinard Road got a lot of comments. International Airport Road, Raspberry Road to Diamond Road, that segment are kind of the biggest areas of comments. Okay, so then kind of looking at what did we identify, what alternatives did we look at, and how is the department thinking about moving forward on these. So you can kind of divide the corridor into 3 segments by kind of how they behave. So this first segment from Hillcrest Drive to Tudor Road is kind of an urban section, signalized intersections, pathways or sidewalks right up next to the street. So the concerns we identified throughout the whole corridor, the largest public comment was, I want to cross the street. And so that's for the corridor, one of the concerns, and then also individual intersections have different congestion, especially Northern Lights, Benson, Spinard, and Tudor have a lot of congestion. And there are some, especially at Northern Lights and Benson, some safety concerns with pedestrians and then left turns. So moving forward, DOT identified some projects or some ideas that could go immediately into projects that are kind of already programmed and almost on the street. So incorporate into current projects, some of the left turn lane extensions could go in and be done right away. Some of the more complicated alternatives, ideas still need more thought. And that includes what's going on at Northern Lights and Benson, and then ideas at Spinard Road. And then some projects, either it looks like at Tudor Road, we're not really getting much benefit from any of the alternatives that we proposed. Or at Hillcrest Drive, turned out we didn't really need to do too much to the ramp, but the intersection itself could use some improvements maybe in how to be a municipality project. Second segment from Tudor Road to C Street is more is a freeway with access controls, so the whole thing is interchanges. So the biggest concerns with these are weaving and getting on and off the ramps, and then also at the interchanges getting pedestrian and bicycles across the interchanges safely. Some of this is already being incorporated, so the Raspberry Road interchange, the improvements that are going in there's some bicycle stuff going in there right now with that project, and so we have an opportunity to look at it and see how it behaves and decide whether that's what we want to spread to other interchanges or do it differently elsewhere. There's also, we identified for the southbound ramp at Diamond Boulevard, if you make the right turn, sometimes it's hard to see, so there's some improvements there that could go with a project that's already moving forward that could go with. And then projects that would go into looking at it further design. Northbound Minnesota between Diamond and Raspberry to International, so on and off ramp improvements, and then some guide sign and on and off ramp improvements on southbound Minnesota. And then we get to the end of the corridor, C Street to Seward Highway is once again, we're back at the signalized intersections. And there's a lot of congestion in this area. There's some safety concerns, and Basically, any connection that would happen between Minnesota Drive and Freeway to the Seward Highway Freeway, they're planning to consider that with this new section of the Seward Highway that they're working on design. That's kind of where the project got us. I don't know if there are any questions.
Did you have a question? So if you go back to the first segment. Yeah, you were on it. So next one. The Hillcrest Drive intersection, talking about improvements to that. What sort of improvements were they saying?
So we looked at signal warrants and didn't meet that. We looked at a roundabout. It works okay. We were asked the public asked about what about always stops, so we looked at that. So that information is in the report, kind of what we looked at and how we looked at it.
Okay, because we just made some improvements actually at that.
Right.
At that intersection.
It just changed.
It gets congested during school drop off and pickup time. Okay. I'll look at the details because we've been working on some of the crossings and looking at that intersection.
Question back there?
I would just add, I've worked on Spinard Road for some time. The segment at the end of our project from 30th Avenue to Spinard, I know there's studies in the past that looked at a couplet. And there's a fair amount, I just want to let you know, there's a fair amount of public opposition to that solution. And so I just wanted to make you aware of that. And there's a lot of development happening at that intersection that, could maybe be even more difficult to resolve. And there's some housing going in that area. And
yeah, I think we got public comment on exactly along this line.
Yep.
Yes.
We have public comment? Sure. So yes, I'm one of those public members that commented on that. The biggest landowner there, of course, is Cook Inlet Housing. And I'm hoping you're talking closely to them about their thoughts on the couplet or other ideas for that intersection. Because our hope in the Spinard community is that once PM&E finishes this project, they'll immediately go into design, or maybe at the same time, of the last remaining corridor of Anchorage's most dangerous street, Spinard Road. So, but if there's a big, we don't know what we're going to do at that intersection, then that perhaps could not continue. And so that design process. So we're real eager to have you guys work very closely with PM&E and the business community and the public in that area for specifically that intersection. And obviously a big, huge over-underpass, it costs hundreds of millions of dollars, probably isn't going to be funded in our lifetime. But whatever solution comes up will affect a lot of people, and we're very hopeful that there's a big push to work together on that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Just a generic question. For the public comments you list, you have 287 total comments. Are those unique comments, or was there a lot of them that were kind of like the same comments between the website, the open house, the email, the phone? Do you know?
You mean like the same person?
Or the same comment itself?
Or very similar.
So
like-
is it 287 unique ones?
There
Or?
There are themes to them, but I think they're fairly
Okay,
unique.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Jeannie. All right. Next up is a presentation on Abbott Road, Phase 1 and Phase 2 rehabilitation.
Thank you guys. My name is Kristen Kiefer. I'm a project engineer at the Department of Transportation. I'm here to talk to you about the Abbott Road Rehabilitation Project. All right, since we were last here, the project has been phased. Phase 1, Lake Otis to Jupiter Drive. design is complete. They're out there constructing it right now. Hoping to complete that work by this middle of next summer. Phase 2, Elmore Road to Birch Road. We're working through final design, right-of-way acquisitions. We anticipate advertisement late 2017 with construction looking at 2018. Some of the existing conditions, or the purpose of the project, it's a 3R project, resurfacing, restoration, and rehabilitation. We're looking to enhance safety, extend the service life, and improve traffic flow. Some of the existing conditions along Abbott Road, there are long queues and delays during commutes. It has one of the highest crash rates on the hillside. It's a 2-lane arterial. It's in the 75th percentile from roost collisions. It has narrow shoulders, and the multi-use pathway on the north side is in poor condition. It does not meet the current crossing standards. Some information on the crash data. As you can see, a lot of the intersections and crossing areas have high accidents. There were 27 news collisions throughout the corridor. Some of the alternatives that were considered during the preliminary design process looked at 5 different alternatives. The preferred alternative was to widen to 3 lanes with a center 2-way left turn lane and to add improvements to the intersections, specifically Lake Otis and Elmore and Birch. The preferred alternative has its center 2-way left turn lane and shifts the alignment to the south to minimize the right-of-way impacts. Looking to improve the level of service and reduce congestion along the corridor. That center 2-way left turn lane removes the turning traffic from the through lanes and reduce delay. We're looking to reduce the side swipe and rear end collisions and angle crashes, and it separates that opposing traffic. This alternative addresses the safety concerns and cost effectively satisfies the purpose and need of the project. This is a rendering of the proposed typical section along Abbott Road. We have a center 2-way left turn lane, 2 lanes, a lane in each direction, 6-foot wide shoulders, and the multi-use path on the north side of the road. A little information on phase 1 that's currently under construction. Also be adding an eastbound through lane at Lake Otis. The Little Campbell Creek culvert will be upgraded to meet current fish passage standards. There will be some intersection improvements at Elmore. Also be pathway, curb ramp, and transit improvements. We're also looking at incorporating a test slab. So it's a steel rubberized reinforced concrete slab. Looking at precasting it to look at rutting, and we'll be monitoring that and working with FHWA and UAA. Phase 2 of the project from Elmore Road to Birch Road, looking at that same kind of layout as phase 1. Design considerations are looking at improving the sight distance by lowering some of those hills to improve the sight distance along the main line. Be clearing vegetation for visibility. Looking at the pathway, ADA, and transit improvements. Currently, the warrants for lighting are not met. We did work with the municipality and ASD to look at a school zone there by Service High School and Trailside Elementary. Currently, the project is not incorporating it at this time, but this project doesn't necessarily preclude that from happening in the future. Most notably, utilities will be underground on the south side of the roadway between Birch and Elmore. And at the Birch Road intersection, there'll be a right turn pocket for that traffic turning south. This kind of represents some of the, recent and current public involvement events. We've had an extensive public involvement process with this project, had a website, attended over 20 community councils and community meetings, held 4 open houses for the project, attended the Anchorage Transportation Fair for the last 2 years as well. This is the project costs as they are today. The phase 1 and phase 2 design and acquisition for right-of-way were done before the project was phased for construction. And then there's the cost for phase 1 and phase 2 for construction and utility relocation. This is the current project schedule. For phase 2, looking forward, we'll continue to coordinate and complete the design, acquire property for the improvements, coordinate with utilities, and work with environmental to progress the project to construction, which we're looking at for 2018. Thank you all very much for your time and opportunity to update you on the project. Do you have any questions?
What was the UAA partnership that you mentioned?
For the test lab, so looking at rutting on a concrete surface, so they'll be installing a rubberized concrete mixture that also has some steel fibers in it. And one of the grad students is looking at that, and we have a monitoring plan that we're doing in conjunction with FHWA for research.
As part of this PhD study.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm the ADA coordinator. Are we adding any new pathway and transit stops and sidewalks and curb ramps, or is it upgrading what's existing?
Upgrading what's existing in a lot of ways. We are adding transit stops as well.
Okay.
And there'll be off-street transit stops. Adding on phase 1, Lake Otis, so the one at Lake Otis will be improved. There'll be 2 new ones at Little Brook. Elmore will have a pair. The south, or like the eastbound transit stop on the south side of the road will be constructed with phase 2.
Okay, and are they connected to the pad pathways, or they be?
On the north side, the transit stops will be connected to the pad pathways. The ones at Elmore will be connected.
Okay.
The one at Little Brook on phase 1 on the south side is not connected.
Okay.
Same with Holly on the south side. Any other questions? Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right. So that concludes the rest of the regular agenda, kind of. Now is the opportunity for committee comments. So are there any comments for the good of the order?
Madam Chair, could I just request reflection in the record that I showed late with the
I didn't know what time you showed up, but yes.
3:28.
Okay. Let the record show, Mr. Lags joined us at 3:28.
And my apologies.
I was giving you 3:26, but.
You're the expert. You're in charge.
Exactly. I would like to make an announcement. This will be my last AMATS Technical Advisory Committee meeting. I am
We don't want you to leave.
I am retiring from state service effective June 30th, and I have, just as a point of interest, I started my DOT career as an AMAT staff person, and so that was in 1988, and so I have really, and then as I moved through the organization, I returned to AMATS and served on the technical advisory committee when I took the chief position about 7 or 8 years ago. And so it has been, I can recall as staff working with Lance Goldberg when he first came on, also Steve Morris, and then Jody. It was often a love-hate relationship back in those days when we were really literally making up things as we went along, as the federal law had changed and really forced a transformation of the way transportation decision-making was made in Anchorage, and it's been really kind of fun to watch it happen and to see it transferred to passing that torch. And so I invite everybody to mark it on your calendars for that Wednesday, I think it's the 29th, 3 o'clock, come over to DOT and have a piece of cake. Thank you. And once we get a logo, I do want a mug.
I'm on it.
I promise you, you will get mug number 1 once we get the.
Biggest mug.
I will hand draw you one.
Yes.
I told, that's what I don't care ready if you have to draw on it.
You get it, you get it.
Thank you.
Well, I guess on behalf of myself and hopefully the rest of the committee, it's been now more than 5 years that I've now been chairing this committee. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's now been more than 5 years that I've been chairing this committee, and you've been a great help to me in learning the ropes as my vice chair, really. And yeah, I'm kind of happy you got to bumble through that. So that when I came in, things were a little bit smoother. We're still, I think every time we go through an MTP update, there's always kind of a little bit of learning process and figuring out timing and everything else. It's we're all in this together, but you've been a great help to me and a great mentor in this, and I appreciate your service, and I hope that everybody in the room would join me in a round of applause.
And I don't intend to pull a Jody Cars and come back.
Is that
It's like,
part
you're
of-
my mentor.
Jennifer, is that part of the love-hate relationship?
Oh, no, it's actually, one of the reasons that I feel confident in retiring now is because within DOT, the staff is on step, and you're handing it off to some really capable, competent people, and so it's a good time.
They both look at each other.
Look right.
You know what? I always tell my staff whenever I go on vacation and they freak out, I'm like, I'm not the important one. You're the ones that keep the ball rolling, really. People just need me to be in the room to tell them no. That's pretty much what my role ends up being. So.
And sign the lease.
Exactly, and sign the paperwork. That's what I do. So, and go to meetings, yes. Any other committee comments for the good of the order? So Wednesday, June 29th, cake, DOT, I have that down. Are there any public comments at this time? Ms. Brooks?
I just wanted to let folks know, so you can put it on your calendar to begin your pre-planning. We have booked the Alaska Airlines Center for the Anchorage Transportation Fair for February 15th, 2017.
February what?
15.
15th, okay. I was going to say it'd be great. Put it on Valentine's Day. I'd be there. I don't feel like you make it. All right.
Valentine's Days in a row up, we think every day, and I don't think we want to do that.
That's funny. All right, any other comments at this time? All right, hearing none, we are adjourned. It is 4:05 p.m. Thank you.